you ready? Are you ready? Ready, 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 ready. Hold your nose steady, hold your nose steady, hold your nose steady, and breathe from deep down in your heels. You know what you want, you've known it for a time now, and it isn't that crazy pipe dream in the sky, pipe dream in the sky, pipe dream in the sky. Coming home, that's what you want. Coming home is what you wanted all the while. Back to this place where you've always been free. Back to this place where you can't fail to see everybody and everything is one. One. Everybody and everything is one. One. Everybody and everything is one. One.
Hello, it's very, very lovely to be here with you. Welcome to session 4 of the City Season Satsang sequence. This one is the Big Heart Activator, and I'll explain what I mean by that shortly. If you've never been before, welcome. If you have been before, welcome. Satsang, as you know, if you've been before, you may know anyway, is an old Sanskrit word, not that there are any new Sanskrit words, which means sitting together in authenticity, in the truth. And truth, the only thing that could ever really be declared as true would be the unmanifest realm, would be the prime cause of everything, which isn't yet manifested as anything, to the play of yin and yang, the dark and the light, the true and the false, the good and the bad, and all the rest of it, including the ugly. And therefore is in a state of the real rather than the relative. As soon as the prime cause manifests itself as a universe like this, everything in it is subject to the law of relativity. So there cannot be anything that is ultimately true that is manifested, because it would always have its flip side. It will always have its yin and its yang. Whereas before manifestation occurs, there is truth, if you like. I'm not pleased to understand. I'd never expect you or have any intention for you to believe what I say. I'm just presenting a view based on my own modern interpretation of this ancient Taoist system of cosmology. You listen but decide for yourself, of course. So you have your own idea about what's true and isn't, and that's totally and utterly fine. As I say, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, I'm just presenting. And what we do, or what we are aspiring to do when we come together like this, which we had to acknowledge is quite miraculous, because despite all the vagaries of this technology, such as what I find quite funny when that tune's playing, and it's like, I don't know if it was doing for you, but when it's going, you know, what you wanted was, you know, coming home, it's like, it was just kind of cracking all over the place. I find the imperfections of it rather funny. However, the miracle of it is that we can join like this, pretty much like spirits in the ether, without having to deal with our bodies, without having to deal with our personalities, without having to deal with our habitual kind of stratagems that we deploy to transact with our fellows. Our personalities aren't in the way, in other words. There's no pretending, there's no play acting, there's no parading, there's no impressing, there's no fear of being impressive, and all the stuff that usually accompanies life, or rather in the flesh meetings. And you know, I don't know if you've ever been to a satsang, traditional satsang held by any of the old gurus in the old days, but there was definitely a kind of school prefect thing going on in there. Like, you know, the ones who've been a lot were like the big shots, and the ones who have been before with nobodies. There was ridiculous kind of hierarchy occurring, because that's what people do when they group together in the flesh. That's the things anyway, in my experience. This, without all of that, there's none of that going on. We come together in purity, and it's a privilege, and it's certainly a privilege, the ones who conduct meetings, so to speak. Now, although it's a Sanskrit word, the basis of all this that we're doing here derives from the Chinese Taoist system, which shares a lot in common with the Vedas and Sanskrit. Sanskrit was attached. But it's in a different tonality, comes from a different culture. Taoism is a very interesting system. It's not a religion. Very important to remember that. It is not a religion. There have been people who have, over the last 400, 500 years, nonetheless nonsense that people do get into, which is creating a litany and a liturgy and a load of mumbo jumbo out of it all. But that isn't Taoism, that's the nonsense, in my humble opinion. The pure Taoism that predates all that is just not a religion at all. That's the whole beauty of it. If you have a religion that you subscribe to, this is a very good way of enhancing your prayerfulness or whatever practice you're involved in. It certainly won't counter it or detract from it. Likewise, if you're into any yogic discipline of any sort, this will only enhance rather than detract from. It requires no belief and no faith whatsoever. It's purely and utterly pragmatic. The people who passed it down, as I say, came from northern China. In the conventional stories, this was about 680 BC, when a man called Lao Tzu, which is actually a poetic acronym, not acronym, what's the thing when you have another, an alias, meaning the eternal child master. This alludes to one of the Taoist principles that to achieve or attain to the enlightened state, whereby you lose yourself, you invest in the loss of the self and merely follow the great flow, which is the Tao. You must be like a child. You must be innocent like a child. It doesn't mean you have to be an idiot or not know what's going on in the world or act like a fool. You can if you want, that's fine. But it's not about that. You've learned all your tricks. You know your skills. You understand how the world appears to work to a certain extent. And those skills, of course, incorporated, along with many others that are included in the Taoist system. But the innocence, the playfulness, the sense of gleefulness that a small child will feel if not interfered with by adults who are all messed up. In those moments where a small child is left to its own devices and is in its pure state, it will feel the joy, it will feel the excitement, the glee, the benign arousal of just being alive, because that is the gift of all gifts. And a small child knows that. Being alive is the gift of all gifts. Loving being alive is the root of all love. And he was credited with being the founder of Taoism, and in the usual way that we mess up these things with silly assumptions, this is a mistake. He was merely a librarian, the head of a library of the archives in the Hunan province, who took it upon himself to collate and put into writing all the aphorisms that he could grab hold of before they all started disappearing, that were passed down through oral tradition associated with the Taoist system. And there were 81 of these rhyming stanzas, and they comprise a book that he called the Tao Te Ching. Ching means book, Te means virtue, and Tao is the great way. So it's the book of virtue of the way, the book of the true way, the book of the virtuous way. This is not this, as I say, it's not the start of Taoism at all. This was already when Taoism was starting to get lost. It was already starting to dissipate. The legend has it, for what it's worth, that it can be traced back to at least 12,000 years ago. And they say that 12,000 years ago it was already getting lost. So one presumes that it originated before the last ice age, that it's something hugely ancient. The legend, though, goes that it came from more than one visitation by aliens from different parts of the universe. The more recent visitation was from Sirius, which is the star that's 8.6 light years away, and happens to be the same star the Egyptians worshipped as Isis and built their pyramids of Giza to align with. And so all the old cultures connect with that one. But then there was an older visitation, a visitation that happened a long time before that, excuse me, that was from the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, which are kind of like the right of Sirius if you're looking at the night sky around about 2, 3 in the morning, around about now-ish, I suppose, around about solstice time. And they came bringing what's called, well, many methods. One of them was called the violet ray. And the violet ray is used in Taoist magic. Now, Taoist magic is conventionally called Wu Wei, Wei Wu Wei, which means the ability to instigate a shift in what appears to be at least external reality. We must accept that everything we perceive is we're perceiving inside of ourselves, therefore is actually subjective, and everybody has a different story. Some they miraculously seem to kind of congruent to a large extent, hence how we have societies and so on, a global culture even. It's a miracle. But in fact, everybody has a different story, a different set of descriptions about what is going on externally. However, one can affect, according to this system, a change in the external world, the world of 10,000 things, the world of the world, by changing your internal intention. And you can deploy various techniques to amplify the power of your intention. Various coloured lights or sounds or other physical techniques, psychophysical techniques, are used in the vast pantheon of Taoist systems or methods to amplify the effects of your intention. And the violet ray is ascribed the property of being able to cause quantum leaps in your transformational operations. So that whatever you intend, if you insert the violet ray into the intention, and I'll explain what I mean by that a bit later, you'll cause shift by a quantum leap rather than just an incremental nudge. Even more importantly than these, which you could say, if you were being extraordinarily profound, are just gimmicks. Much more important than even these techniques is the fundamental basis for how you sit into your original power, and how by doing sit into the Tao itself. When I say sit into, I mean you drop back into it. And the way you do that is literally by dropping back into it. The rear part of your body, which is everywhere behind the side seams of your garment, of your shirt, your dress, your jacket, whatever it is, everywhere behind the side seams we will pull back. And the back has a property of being still, strong, silent, and relatively invulnerable. It's quite well protected. There's not a lot going on in the back. There's not much noise in the back. There's not much noise of organs working in the back. All of that goes on in the front. There's generally not a lot of emotional turbulence occurring in your back. That goes on in the front. There's not a lot of thinking going on in the back. That tends to go on in the front of the brain, and so on. The intestines and the noise of those are in front. All the rest of it, the heartbeat, the noise of the breathing, everything is generally heard out in the front. The back is relatively much quieter. We tend to sit in our front because it's more exciting in there. This is probably a product of, it's more relatively recent development as the forebrain develops, which is a much recent part of the brain to develop. And because the sense organs face forwards, we perceive the world as going on in front of us. And because what we're perceiving as the world is an exciting, stimulating event, or series of events, it has to draw us forwards and to meet it. So we come forwards into the front part of the body. And once we're in there, we get habituated to being in there. We don't even realize it's an option. We remain lodged there, everywhere forwards of the side seams, that is. When we do that, which is not what we do when we're in the womb. I'm in the womb right in the back. If you look at the shape of the embryo in the womb, it's all back really, isn't it? You don't really see the front. The embryo is sitting back. That's where it is mostly. Once you're born and you start being inducted into the ways of the world, the tendency is to come forwards pretty early on in life. Probably, I'd say, around about 4 or 5, once you get involved in school, kindergarten, all that sort of thing. When you come into the front of your body like that and remain there, you're held enthralled to the world going on around you. You're therefore reacting to everything that you're perceiving is going on in front of you, in the front of your body. So you're reacting to it in an emotive or an emotional way, and it's a noisy way. You're taking on all the qualities of the front. Which is, the front is vulnerable. The front is relatively weak compared to the back. And then, as I say, the front is noisy. I mean by that in the front of your brain, in the forebrain, you have an incessant internal conversation occurring. Whether you're aware of it or not is another thing. But that's where you talk to yourself about how well or badly you're doing, how well or badly other people are doing, what's it all about, what do I need to do next, what does my hair look like, what's it like when I die, should it matter? Do I care? Should I be not thinking this, that, blah, 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 all the rest of it? That was just a little made-up snapshot. We obviously got all our own versions of the internal dialogue, and it's shifting all the time anyway. But it's like the Houses of Parliament. It's like a noise in there a lot of time, or it's just like a wall between two people, or it's just somebody shouting somebody else down. There's conversation occurring in there, commentary, and a evaluation of what's being perceived as going on around. It's usually totally spurious and subjective, of course, but nonetheless it's going on. We mistake that internal conversation for reality. This internal conversation gives rise to, and vice versa, it's given rise to, by an emotionally caused tension in the solar plexus area, the upper abdominal area. Reason being energetic is this is where we process the energy of all incoming information. So while the brain may translate that incoming energy into thoughts and thought sequences, in the belly it doesn't translate that into thoughts there, it's just pure energy. Now we exist only by virtue of the fact that we resist. We're resistors, like electronic resistors. Otherwise we just dissipate into the atomic continuum. But we don't, because we serve, our bodies, our beings, our presences serve as resistors. Therefore it's our nature to resist. Now information is assailing us at an infinite rate. An infinite amount of information is coming through every split millisecond, and therefore the solar plexus is continually saying, no, wait a minute, okay, no, wait a minute, okay, no, wait a minute, okay, no, wait a minute, and so on. And there are various bits of information it doesn't want to digest, it doesn't want to let in, so it goes no, and it holds them there, and that's where the tension builds up. It's information your solar plexus is not actually willing to process, even though it's going to have to eventually anyway. And when I say information, the solar plexus is linked directly to the subconscious. The subconscious is the mechanism by which we receive all the information that exists throughout time and space without limit. The conscious mind filters that down, a bit like a Google search, to something we can identify and work with and carry on with the business of being alive as best we can. We are actually right now processing the climate changes in Sydney, Australia. We're measuring rainfall patterns in Brisbane. We're hearing the snowflakes fall in New York. We're all this is happening. We're even aware of the gravitational shift that's occurring as Saturn moves its tilt slightly in relation to the Sun. All of this truly is being processed. And I could just go like, hang on, that's a paradol to drum rhythm. Now I couldn't do that. I just try to count that out. It would be really difficult, but I do it naturally, it seems. But it's really my subconscious is calculating the frequencies of the series of notes. Now that's nothing. That's totally crude and simple. We're calculating so much more complex stuff than that all the time. Therefore, perception has a degree or a propensity towards a certain tension in the solar plexus. That's noisy, but also it causes the adrenals to be squeezed, and what it squeezes out of them is cortisol, the stress hormone. And that's a very addictive hormone, very similar to cocaine in its action. And we get addicted to it, so we keep squeezing the solar plexus. To aid that, we hold our breath without even noticing it. That's actually unconsciously to stop the flow of information, which is impossible, and it causes a build-up and makes things worse. And the result of this ongoing tension in the solar plexus, however mild it may be in any given moment, is to cause a mild or subtle constriction throughout the chest and thoracic region, thereby limiting the breathing even further and causing a closing down of the, which is the part of you whence issues forth your beautiful love, which is pertinent to today's session because this is a big heart activator. Now, when that love closes down, the joyfulness, the innate purity and innocence of the small child within is no longer free to radiate. It gets blocked. Now, when a little child gets imprisoned, as you may remember if you were ever put in your bedroom as a punishment or whatever, it goes through all kinds of trauma. It gets really resentful and starts acting up in strange ways or thinking strange things and what have you, because it's unfair, it's unnatural, it's no longer free. And that's what happens to your beautiful soul inside your heart. You are still that little child, we all are, nothing changed. You kind of grew rings of adulthood around it, but you're still that being, that initial beautiful, innocent being that came out of your mother's womb. And when you're trapped behind a closed heart, it's like being locked in your bedroom, and it's not a nice feeling. So you take on a different, more mistrustful view of the world. You stop trusting the beauty of others. You start seeing the ugliness instead. It's reality starts to become a little bit more fraught, rather than an open-hearted, beautiful, loving one. It's a scary one instead. Now, this affects the throat. The throat is the center through that controls your communication. When the throat closes, your communication becomes false, it becomes inauthentic. And this is happening on a mass scale. You can look at society today, and you can even hear it in the fashionable way that English girls have of speaking, which is similar to Valley girls in America and so on. You know, where you kind of like strangulate your throat, like, you know, you're talking and you don't really let your voice come through. That is the kind of emotional strangulation that even if you are trying to be authentic, it isn't. You know, it's faking. Everybody's, like, you can see it writ large. People are living in a fake experience of reality, and that is spreading. This comes from talking about. Now, this closing down of the throat, the chest, and all the rest of it pulls the head slightly forwards. It has to be a lot of this to happen. With the head tilting just slightly forwards, it's a heavy old thing, the head, you have to remember. The energy of the brain tilts forward, coagulates in and collecting the forebrain, where all that commentary is going on. Now, with that extra pressure going into the forebrain, it revs up the conversation. So it becomes more and more sort of random, erratic, silly, daft, off the line and everything. And that is what you're mistaking for the reality, that conversation. So you can see it tilts everybody. That's why the world is in general fairly tilted. It's one of the reasons it's fairly tilted now. So what the Taoist thing is to all of this, the antidote to all of this, which is something used in the martial arts to great effect, and where it's used there is that you're trained to sit in your back when you go into a fight or a contest. Pragmatically, because if you punch from your back, it has your whole body weight behind it, or if you kick or whatever, or if you block or you ward, whatever you do from the back, you've got your full body weight behind it. Therefore, you don't need nearly as much muscular strength to be effective. When you're operating purely from your front, you have to rely on muscular strength, and then it depends on who's actually got more brawn, you or the opponent. Secondly, when you're in your back, and this is the important part, this lies for everybody, you have acquired those qualities of the back, the stillness, the calmness, the quietness, the strength, the relative invulnerability, for a start, but you're also able to see from back there that all this noise that's occurring in the front, in the belly, the chest, the throat, the front of the head, is but that. It is just noise. And the version of who you thought you were, this drama reference being who's, oh God, the traffic, oh gosh, I'm so stressed, I've got so much to do, oh, life's so wrong, oh, it's going great, everything's brilliant, blah, 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 and all that stuff that we normally think of as, that's just the noise going on in the front. The back part of us is still, and it is actually the background presence, the witness bearer, watching everything unfolding impartially. It doesn't matter if it goes this way or that way, because it is not invested in all that noise. It's just delighted to be here, come what may. It has no value judgments on this situation being better than that. Instinctively, everything is subject to yin and yang. So if something goes one way, it will inevitably spin around the other way. So there's no point investing in something, because something's going to turn to its opposite. Instead, they keep saying, invest in loss. In other words, invest in nothing, and everything is yours. And that's what this means. So when the martial artists would go into battle, so to speak, in the back, there wouldn't be the fear of this constructed version of the self dying or being hurt. And without fear, you are fairly invincible as long as you've got your moves sorted out. Now you can apply this to everyday life. When you're in your back, the whole drama of these apparently huge challenges, which are actually relatively tiny, falls away. And then the drama resolves itself without you having to meddle or get busy trying to do it. It does it for you. When you sit in your back, at any moment during the day, everything is fine. You have everything you need. There is nothing missing. When you're in your front, all you're aware of is what you haven't got and what you've got to get. When you're in the back, you know you have it all already. You've already got the greatest gift there is, being alive. And with that beautiful kind of regal attitude, you just naturally tend to draw whatever you need by what we would call divine providence, without stress or strain, providing your intention to do so is clear. And that's what the Taoists mean really by Wu Wei. So we could be using that backdrop combined with the violet ray in this session. I call it the intolerance reductive process. And I said, because ironically, though this coming so-called festival is hinged on coming together in a warm blaze of mutual tolerance and harmony in a season of brotherly love, or whatever it's called, most of the time it tends to, well, a lot of the time it elicits a bit of more of a cold freeze of intolerance and judgmentalism. And this is what the family dysfunctionality is so visible. And the disharmony tends to be more prevalent than the harmony. People pretending with each other, trying to quell the arguments and the rest of it. This happens despite themselves. But by the time we have done this, it's my promise that the heart will be wide open and remain so to everyone close and far, and that will bring a capacity to tolerate and accommodate everyone in the human family, including everybody that actually is really irritating. But by quantum leap, because rather than burst into the next level of saintliness for you and for everyone here. But I mean, not only the sort of cliche image of the family dinner table, nurgles and all the rest of it, but I mean, I see it on the roads even now. People are just incredibly impatient to get somewhere as if it really mattered. Like, it's all about tying everything up before the end of the year. So as soon as we set an imaginary, arbitrary deadline, it gives the game more urgency. And everyone's urgent. You can see it. People driving urgently to get. I mean, I saw a woman shouting at somebody in the car in front yesterday. Just get out of the fucking way. I need to get to the. She needs to get to a shop to buy something. I understood. I didn't judge her. I gave her a look, which was like, you know, like, hello, my sister. It's all going to be fine. And she did actually soften in the face at that point. But it was this. And it's all over nothing. All over absolutely nothing. And it comes about because we imagine that we're all moving in a straight line through time, like through a year. But we're not. We're going round and round in circles. We're orbiting the sun. There really is no new year. It's a nonsense. It's a childish nonsense, this new year idea. And apart from that, preceding it, Christmas itself, they're very, very give a fig about a baby being born over 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, you know. Like, even if they did, it's very difficult to see the actual relevance of that to what actually generally occurs over the Christmas period. But anyway, you can just talk from a really Anglo-centric viewpoint, because I grew up in England. But it's really different wherever you at the moment. It goes by without you even noticing it there. Very, very gentle, very, very quiet. Catalonia was the same. In Germany, it's all over after the end of Christmas Eve. In the US, most of that stuff's already been spent on the Thanksgiving blowout and so on. It's Britain I've seen it the most. It generates the most stress of it at it anywhere I've seen. I don't know why that is. But this kind of Christmas thing in silly season is not actually the point anyway. On a larger scale, and much more importantly, the world, our world, is undoubtedly closing in on itself. It's quite clear and apparent that everyone is retrenching rather than expanding out. Not everyone, but the vast majority of the movement, say, appears to be retrenching rather than opening out. And it's through fear and mistrust and a deep existential insecurity. People feel that they can no longer rely on the future. And the reaction to all of this is to close down against immigrants, against this, against the rich, against the poor, against this country, that culture, that culture. And what this really means is closing down the heart. But the gift of life is being awake to the fact that all of this is Tao playing. The whole thing is the Tao playing, including you, including me. And the Tao is the big heart, if you like. You can call it whatever you like, but right now I'm calling it the big heart. It's the font of all of this that we see, all this we can experience of all of us, and it's the font, all the love forming it. Sentimental nonsense love. I am talking the sheer love of being, this innate love of being here. You feel it now, don't you? You can feel it. I love being here. Feel it. That we all got inside. Even if you're really stressed, even if you're really down, even if you're really scared, even if you think you're being confronted by insurmountable challenges, beneath all of that comes to your back and you can feel it. I'm loving being alive right now. And then being able to share that with everyone, not having to say anything about it, not having to go, I love you, I love you. It's nothing to do with that. Not even about being kind or doing obvious acts of kindness or anything like that, although of course that's a beautiful thing to do. But from your heart, feeling that love of being alive, you ignite an epidemic of love. And that is what today is intended for, to ignite an epidemic of love. In our quiet here in our homes, gathered like angels all around the planet from every single time zone today. And this, I propose, is the best antidote, at least I can think of right now, to all the closing down I perceive is happening. And though I have no clue if we can actually alter the course of destiny, I do know that the injection of the smallest agent into any chemical mix can eventually cause a huge effect. So by us connecting and opening the sluice gates to the big heart and its outpouring, and then radiating it as one into the collective consciousness, something positive will occur consequently, at least enough to attenuate the atmosphere somewhat. The premise of this is that you cannot beat the darkness with a stick, but you can shine your light brighter, and that's what we're about to do, specifically the violet light, which is the quantum jump magic technique. And we're going to shine that thing right into our hearts together. So are you ready? If so, this is the moment to let yourself go. Close your eyes, lower your eyes. You might want to leave a slit at the bottom of your eyes, just let a little bit of light in. Slow your breathing down. Let the breath flow freely and smoothly. Become aware of the belly rising as the breath comes in and falling as the breath goes out. Become aware of all your muscles and your sinews and command them all to soften now. Just let everything in your body soften. And get a sense of allowing the weight of your head, the weight of your thoughts, the weight of your life story that you're carrying on your shoulders, the weight of all that blockaging in the heart, the weight of all the tension in the shoulders and shoulder blade, and all that weight drop. Just let it drop down into your lower belly and nestle in the pelvic floor. Weight, like a big heavy paperweight, making your legs solid and contacting the ground. So you get a sense that you're surrendering to gravity. Counter the stopping effect of that by imagining the crown of your head being winched up to the ceiling by virtue of an invisible silk thread, and to make the back of your neck longer and your chin to slightly drop your chest. Notice that your inner sky of mind has brightened somewhat as you've done that. Now your shoulders, upon which you carry the burden of your life story, let them drop. Let the burden drop. Let that story drop. Shoulders drop, and let them broaden out as they drop. Just very slightly, without any way arching your back. Raise your breath by a fraction of a millimeter, forwards and outwards slightly diagonally, as a gesture of rising up to orbit. And get a feeling of having a choice now option between remaining in front of your body, in the front of your brain, or exercising your option to go back behind your side seams. And if you could now visualize the front of your spinal column, your shoulder blades, front of your shoulder blades, and the frontal aspects of your rear pelvic bones, your sacrum and so on. And imagine that these are like the back of a throne, and you're now leaning back into like the queen or the king of the realm. So you're kind of leaning back into your own shoulder blades, into the front of your own spine, into the rear pelvic bones and sacrum. Feeling really supported by it. You're right back inside, and sinking too, so you're sinking down in the seat through your sit bone. Now your skull is something can be treated slightly independently in a way. You could imagine that your skull is a cave, a sacred cave, in which sits the Buddha of ultimate enlightenment. And it has a floor in its cave. And if you were to just very subtly tilt your head back a bit, it would cause the Buddha of ultimate enlightenment to come out of the noise of the forebrain with such a great sigh of relief, and be able to sort of sit at the back of the cave. It would be obliged to slide back into the rear of the cave, where it's very thoughtfully provided is a beautiful pile of sumptuous cushions of all sorts of colours, wonderful fabrics, very exotic, and smelling of incense, of course. And you as the little boy, sit on the cushions now and lean your back into the rear of the cave, the rear wall of the skull, and just gaze out into infinity with no purpose in mind whatsoever other than to gaze out into infinity. While the engine room going on down below, there's this wonderful blowing motion of the breathing, everything's very soft and relaxed, and the power, the presence of being is sitting in the back. So the front is now free itself. And the front of the body and the front of the brain, you'll notice, has gone a lot quieter. It almost seems rather hollow, in fact. And all that former noise of drama and imaginary stories and all the rest of it has quite a murmur. And the front of the chest has visualize this as a pair of sliding doors, which now quite to reveal in the center of your chest, the core of your chest, what we might want to see is a cluster of precious rubies and garnets, lovely amethyst, like red, pinky, amber, flame-coloured, all the colours you'd associate with a heart full of love. And a wonderful fragrance emitting from it, not just of rose, that'd be obvious, but a beautiful in and a bit of patchouli and some bergamot on the top and amber and all kinds of wonderful smells emitting from the core of the chest outwards without limit. And a wonderful sort of rose gold, very soft rose gold, kind of light white, bright light, a beautiful mist of light that just goes ubiquitously all around you as far as the eye can see beyond you from your heart, including behind you. And specifically joining you with everybody in this circle so that we're all kind of connected with these subtle tendrils of love to each other. What I'd like you to do now is physically, without opening your eyes, bring your right forefinger up to the base of your throat. You'll find there's a notch in the bone at the base of your throat. That's the top of the breastbone there, right in the middle. If you press into that with your finger, like press down onto it, rather, onto the notch, as if you're pushing in a direction towards the pubic bone. What this does is you might want to hand just to give it balance. What this does is it immediately clears your thinking mind. It immediately clears any kind of early superficial blockages of communication, and it quells impatience and intolerance within seconds. Remember this subsequently for any moments that you find yourself beset by intolerance or impatience for others, or somehow being at the mercy or the effects of others being impatient and intolerant around you or towards you. This is a very powerful step between both of you almost instantaneously. And we're doing it now to engender a state of greater tolerance. Now remove the hand slowly and be comfortable. And as you do this and you can feel the subtle energy shift, contemplate the human family right now. I'm talking about all 7+ billion of us around the world. And this is all sorts of nations and languages and customs and cultures and both genders and all ages, all walks of life. Some with crazy beliefs, some with wonderful beliefs, some with beautiful intent, some with awful intent, some really clear, some really confused, some really stressed, some really relaxed, some doing stuff, some not doing stuff, some being born, some dying, some going through this stage, some going through that. All the different variations that you could possibly imagine 7+ billion people are involved in at this very point in time. And rather than feeling the usual sort of tendency to guard yourself, to judge the others of all of that, notice that behind the bolshiness, behind the bravado, behind the even act of awful terror and violence is deep, deep suffering. It's suffering for being removed from this experience. And feel compassion. Have a sense to feeling compassion, that baby behind the disguise of an adult who's acting up in a crazy way. That's suffering. That baby is suffering. That soul is suffering. Every single human being on this planet is suffering behind the bravado, just like you and I being a human being. And feel compassion for yourself, for all of them, for all the front cells of everybody on the planet, as it were. Now, we're going to bring the ray into the chest. This is a little bit like a psychic surgery operation. Visualize sitting on a, this is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but bear with me. Imagine a little cloud, a Tibetan stylized kind of cloud made of kind of pink rose color, a bit orange, like the sunset. Sitting in a lotus position, extremely considerate, whatever, is a holy being. And this holy being can be in any kind of idiom you fancy. If you're into Christianity, you can see it as Jesus or as a saint. If you're into Buddhism, you can see it, and you could see it as sort of like a Taoist fool wandering about. Buddhism, you could see it as one of the gods, and so on and so forth. It really doesn't matter. But the main thing is, as you see it, what you see is your face. This is you, this moment's version of the perfected version of you. This is like the little Buddha inside the back of the head there, but writ large in front of you and a little bit above you, hovering on this mysterious, mystical cloud. And it's a holy being. This is the holy self. This is the self that is beyond the throes of dark and light, beyond the throes of the yin and the yang. This is the representative of the ultimate being, and the one with your face on it. And this holy version of you, almost impossible to sit in front of. You know how they say you can't see the face of God and live. So this is like getting close to Mark with that one. And it's smiling at you. And it's smiling at you with such intensity that it melts away all your resistance and suspicion and cuts right through all the defenses and comes almost like a shaft of love into your body. And as it's doing so, it raises its hand, both its hands, and from its arms comes a stream of violet ray. Now, the violet is a subtle violet. It's not like ultraviolet light. It's more subtle and gentle on the beam than that. And it contains a gold and a rose and a bit of emerald and a little bit of white and silver and so on. That is the predominant carrier of all the colours is violet. Yet absolutely persistent. And it's coming at you in this dual stream which seems to merge into one and enters in from diagonally above you into the center of your chest. Now, the holy being version of you sitting there, it has a huge heart. Its heart is so wide open, and this love is streaming into you in the form of a violet ray with this rose and this gold, with such gentle persistence, but such persistence nonetheless. But after a moment or two, it's as if it's busting your actual heart center right open. And as this happens, it flips you into being the holy being, so that now come right out of yourself and be inside the holy being instead. So you're now sitting inside the holy being of you, and you're gazing down at your local physical self with absolute compassion, and you're shooting this love through your palms at your local self. You want to rest your palms now, holy being, and see how your local self with its eyes closed is looking at you. You're just now in charge of the show, and you can feel your own big heart opening and opening and opening, and it's becoming so big and radiating so much love that there really it's very difficult to distinguish between you now and the Tao itself. It's as if you are the whole universe beaming love out, not just to your local self, but to all the cells in this group, and to all the cells of all the 7+ billion people, not to mention all the other living creatures on this planet and other planets throughout time and space. So it's love. This love, the holy being and transmitting love, is the love for life itself. This is not anything sentimental or righteous. This is the actual, real, instinctive love for being alive, just the love of life itself. It's bursting out of you and going everywhere. And as it does so by it, and you're also by them, because you're open now, so you're receiving the beautiful love coming from the holy beings of everyone in this circle. And now know yourself by intention, through intention, as the Tao itself, with supreme tolerance. You're able now to accommodate anyone and everything, everyone and everything, no matter what, with compassion. With this openness, you are no longer, nor will you ever be, again, fooled by the bravado of others. You're fully aware that the suffering behind it is what's causing the bravado. And this healing with the violet ray, with the flecks of rose and gold, is making you totally and utterly resilient and calm and tolerant and unflappable now. Now, what we're going to do, let that be your intention, that I am totally resilient and calm and tolerant and unflappable in my compassion and my clarity and my understanding of all my human family and of course of myself, so that no matter what occurs during the passage of the silly season and thereafter, no matter what, this compassion remains undaunted and unshakable. And it's this compassion, this love turned into something that connects with everybody, that protects me and protects everyone around me, no matter what happens. Now, see us as this circle of holy beings, and sitting, looking down at our local selves, those beautiful beings, bless them all, with their eyes closed, just sitting here in this amazing state of not being here almost, because we're here instead. And let's turn ourselves around so that we're facing into the circle now, and knock ourselves down over the physical selves. So now we, us much bigger holy beings, are sitting with our smaller local physical selves within us. We are now a big being with the big heart, and inside of us are these lovely, lovely local selves of ours that are going to die at some point, one way or the other. And that's fine, it doesn't matter, because we're not going to die. We are forever like this. And in our midst, in the middle of our circle, there is the planet, with all the people rushing around, including our beautiful local selves, all the people doing their stuff, being human and going through all the rigors that that entails. And flood the whole scene with the violet ray together, all of us holy beings. Just see the whole planet enveloped in, it's just going everywhere, and wherever it goes, it's quantum leaping and opening a path for everybody, for everybody, for everybody, for everybody, without exception. So that at this precise moment in time on the planet, there is like a switch being turned on, although very subtle and very discreet, like a butterfly flapping its wings, causing a whole world. This is causing an opening that is potentially having a huge effect to antidote, or at least attenuate, the opposite. Comes a kind of softness and opening, a return to trust and welcoming and embracing each other rather than shunning and pushing away and so on and so forth. And if that resonated at all, smile, tap your hands 3 times, and very slowly open your eyes, wriggle your fingers and wriggle your toes. And we have now but 5 minutes to do an intense Q&A session. What do you think of?
Hello. To ask a question, we only have one question at the moment, and that was from last week. So if you would like to ask a very quick question, please type it into the question box for me to read out, or raise your hand by clicking the blue circle with the yellow hand and the green arrow. So the question from last week is from Karen.
Yeah.
She says, ever since my mother got cancer and has now passed, my relationship with my family completely changed, and subsequently I have been alienated from them. Is there hope to reconnect, or do I let it go? It seems everything I do makes it worse.
That happens quite often, Karen, and I don't really know what to say. All I could suggest is that behind the disguises of the various family members who are appearing to be a bit recalcitrant and invulnerable, and you can't get through to them, there is this in a state of bewilderment and pain. The more people act out like that, the more pain it indicates that they're in internally. If you can start by coming into this open-hearted, big heart, compassionate state, and loving the little baby inside of each of them, like you would have done when you were tiny and they were tiny, that's a start. The second approach is that each of them, or this whole situation, if you like, is the Buddha. You could call it what you want, let's call it the Buddha. Come to help learn something about it, something through an interesting growth process. So if you can thank the Buddha that's behind the disguise, this whole situation, and of each individual in it, thank the Buddha for the lesson, even though you don't know what it is yet, but thank it. It will feel free to take its bow and leave the stage, and the scenario will shift. If you then combine this with having a clear intention that there will be a state of harmony attained again in the future between you and them, and that through all this you'll actually grow a lot closer with each other, and that the intention is also that you don't have to actually do anything yourself to serve itself, and that you just let that be known to your view. Let it be known with your big heart open, flooding the scene that you're seeing with you and them together in a beautiful violet light. I think you'll find that within a period of time, I don't know how long it will be, spontaneously will arise the opportunity to have these heart-to-heart conversations that are obviously needed, and a healing will occur. This is my prognosis, and I'd love it if you let me know if that turns out to be the case.
Okay, we have no more questions at the moment, Stephen.
Well, that's perfect. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. Okay, hey, Sue, what's the next one? What's the theme of next Saturday? I didn't have the prescience to check it out myself.
I can't remember off the top of my head, to be absolutely honest.
What a silly Billy I am to not do that. I'm going to look now, actually. Oh, it's not letting me go into a new page. How ridiculous. Anyway, it's going to be really good, so come to it, because it doesn't matter what it's about anyway. The whole thing's about coming together and sharing. However creative it's kind of got there, just sharing somehow this awareness of ourselves, the big ones, the big heart, coming together. And this gives us strength, and this creates something. It causes a chain of events to occur that is impossible to predict, but I feel very strongly is worth its weight in gold. And it's just lovely doing it. So please do, not please do, just come. It's going to be great. And other than that, like I say, it's pip pip and toodaloo.